Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Joining me on the phone, as always, it is co-host Alan Niven. Or actually, if you look at the way I write the episodes now, I write Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon ... and Alan Niven presents. So I think we might have to update the Wikipedia page. Bonjour, Monsieur Alain. How are you?
Bonjour. I am very good today. It's a splendid, beautiful day in Arizona in the desert. June is usually the toughest month to get through. It's the hottest temperatures, but it's probably only in the high 70s out here at the moment, and it's just perfect. The sky is COVID blue, clean and clear, and it's lovely.
Well, speaking of COVID, I did read in the news, though, can we really trust the news anymore? But I read that Arizona is one of the hottest spots for COVID, that there's a resurgence in the virus, which is not good news. So hopefully it stays far away from you and everybody else.
I think people need to keep their sense of caution about them. I am aware that 75% of the ICU beds in the state are now filled with patients, which I think is a warning to everybody. And I noticed on the news today that in Beijing, they'd closed down the major wholesale market, food market in the center of the city. And there are something like between 10 and 15,000 people who work there, and they've just closed it down because of another spike. And I think it's just a warning to everybody out there, guys. Keep your common sense. Keep using your hand wipes. And my recommendation is always have something in the car, because that's your first line of defense, is get in the car, clean your hands off, clean your steering wheel. But let's get into some music.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I read that too, and I think they said it was, at least in the Canadian news, that it was the largest market in the world or something. Like you said, there's like 15,000 employees, not to mention the people that go there. But just real quick on that, Doro Pesh of Warlock played a show on the weekend of June 12th, 13th, 14th, where people drove in. So it was a drive-in concert. Everybody was in their car. And so we'll have Doro on one of the next episodes just to quickly talk about that. But what do you think of that drive-in concept? Is it, making lemonade out of, lemons, or is it silly? Is it smart? Is it the way of the future? How do you quickly just see that?
I love the idea of people driving into a concert because, you can put your coolers in the back of the car. You can bring food easily. You can bring drinks easily. You can bring a couple of friends, and you don't have to feel vulnerable to people sitting right next to you in a seat. I think it's a brilliant concept. I think a lot of people are wishing today that we still had drive-in film theaters, because that's a great way to go and see a movie and get out of the box and feel like you're doing something and still be safe. And bear in mind at Sturgis, all the bikers would come in and ride their bikes right up to the stage, and then rev them instead of applauding after a song, which was an incredible thing to have happen. But no, I think that's a brilliant idea that Doro has employed.
I think it's great too. And Garth Brooks is doing something similar, the country star. He is doing a concert that's going to be broadcast to 300 drive-ins in the U.S., and you pay, and he's going to perform at a soundstage wherever he is, Los Angeles, Nashville, wherever, and they're going to transmit this to these drive-ins across the states. And the first thing you say when you hear that, you go, is there's 300 drive-ins in the States in 2020? Yes, there are. So, right? Because I read that and I went, whoa, there's 300 drive-ins? But yeah, that's another interesting concept. And I think that might actually be sort of a wave of the future. Instead of taking a whole production on the road that costs millions of dollars, you do one show on a soundstage and you broadcast it to everybody around the world at the same time and bring in the ticket revenue. I mean, that's sort of an interesting concept too.
It's an interesting concept, but of course the managerial brain starts ticking in, and my first caveat is, guys, if you go to a gig like that, watch out for the black and whites and Smokey the Bear sitting in the bushes to try and pull you over for a DUI when you're leaving the gig.
Oh, yeah, I agree. But let's get over to our guest today. It is Tommy Shaw, and he has released a cover of the Led Zeppelin classic, Going to California. And I have to say, from the 80s era, Zakk Wylde did a version, and I believe maybe Jeff Pilson was on it, or maybe Zakk did it back in 96, 97, which is absolutely stunning. Maybe even the version to go to, but Tommy's version is great. Were you a fan of Tommy Shaw and Styx? Were you a fan of Going to California? Is it one of the classic Led Zeppelin songs?
Oh, it's a great Led Zeppelin song. And of course, Tommy has had a pretty stellar career. I wouldn't say that I was a tremendous Styx fan, but I did buy Grand Illusion on its release while I was traveling in the States from the UK, and I thought that was a really solid and intelligent record. But I may be wrong on this, and forgive me if I am, but I think Tommy also did, and I don't know if it ever got released, but he did a record of entire covers, and I think it was under the name The Boonies or something. It was some bizarre name, but there were some pretty splendid covers that he did on that record.
Well, he did do a covers record with Jack Blades of Night Ranger, and I can see the cover in my head, but I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, he's known to do covers. And by the way, just quickly on Styx and Led Zeppelin, for years fans have debated whether or not the song Sweet Madam Blue was a ripoff of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And of course, Great White, your band covered that. So do you know both songs? Do you hear any similarities? Because I've actually spoken to Dennis DeYoung about it, and he said, Mitch, we didn't cover Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. He said, to be perfectly honest, we stole While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Go back and listen to Sweet Madam Blue. He did. He told me that for real.
Again, it's a long time ago, but I seem to remember exchanging some letters with some legal counsel employed by Led Zeppelin as to the credit of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, because, again, I hope my memory is not wrong, but I seem to remember Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You was basically a blues standard that they decided they were going to put their names on. And I think at some point, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You was credited as arranged by Led Zeppelin. And then I think that the as arranged slipped off and they were collecting the royalties on it. But my memory of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You is that it was a blues standard.
It
not
probably,
written by Zeppelin.
Yeah, well, we don't want to get into the whole debate, but there's a lot of stuff that wasn't really written by Led Zeppelin. But before we get over to Tommy Shaw, let me just state...
I could tell you a lovely little story. Now, you know that Jack Russell and Mark Kendall of Great White are massive Zeppelin fans. So there was one evening that I thought, maybe I should play them this record. And I pulled out this record and played it for them, and they were sitting there and looking a little puzzled and agitated, and Jack looked at Mark, and Mark looked at Jack, and eventually Jack turned around to me and he said, Niv, why is this old black man trying to play Led Zeppelin? And of course, the album I was playing was Willie Dixon's I Am the Blues.
That's hilarious. That is funny. And just real quick, earlier this week, June 14th, 1995, guitarist Rory Gallagher passed away. So it's been, what's the math on that? 25 years, I guess. Has nothing to do with Tommy Shaw, has nothing to do with Led Zeppelin, but were you a Rory Gallagher fan, and did his passing 25 years ago affect you in any way, shape, or form?
Well, when somebody you admire and you recognize as a really spirited player passes, it does affect you in a little bit of a way. There's that pang of regret that they're gone and they're not going to generate any new performances. But he, unfortunately, is somebody I didn't get the opportunity to meet. But yes, a special player. And if you don't know Rory Gallagher, go check him out.
Yeah, and I'll finish on this real quick, but he's another one of these guys that seems to have this continental divide. If you're in the UK or Europe, he's like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Joe Bonamassa or Satriani or Vai. He's just one of these guitar gods. And sometimes in North America, you sort of have to explain it to people. You go, no, he's a guitar god. Trust me. And it's just strange sometimes how we have these divides between populations, because ultimately we're all music fans and we sort of all like, our bands, our Great Whites and our Guns N' Roses and our Def Leppards and our, and it's interesting.
Well, there's many, as I say often, there's many a slip between cup and lip, and all kinds of things can go wrong when you're dealing with a major record company. But one of the things that befuddled me was how good the Angels from Australia were and how little they were known here, which I tried to amend in my own small way by getting them a deal on Chrysalis back in the 80s. But, that's another case of, if you don't know the Angels from Australia, go check them out. And while you're at it, check out Rose Tattoo.
And Havana Black. But no, it's just strange because, in the next couple of weeks, we've got interviews with REO Speedwagon. We've got interviews today with Tommy Shaw and others. And some of those bands, the Night Rangers, they haven't really translated to European markets. And anyway, it's just
Not
always
at
bad.
all. I mean, when I bought my first REO albums, I bought them while I was traveling here in the States. Went back to London and was pretty much the only person in my social circle who had an REO record. And I seem to remember it was a double live record. Help me out. This would have been 1977.
I can't remember right now. I mean, High Infidelity, of course, is the one that set the world on fire. But it's just strange to me. You look at Ted Nugent, you look at Journey, you look at Styx, you look at REO, you look at Night Ranger. Great American success. They can go out and do 100 shows a year in the U.S. They rarely come into Canada. Well, Styx does, but the rest of them rarely come into Canada, and they certainly rarely ever go to Berlin, for example. It's baffling. Anyway, yes.
A part of that is the fact that the summertime is the main touring market. And that's when bands want to go out and play the big venues, the outdoor venues, and so on and so forth. And there are American bands who really don't want to go and play Europe in the winter. So they stayed here in America and made a lot of money in the summer and went, Poland in the rain and the snow? No, I don't think so. Because it's like anything else. You've got to put the work in. And you cannot build a following unless you go out there and prove yourself as a live band.
Yeah, I agree. But conversely, and we've had this discussion 100 times, the Rory Gallaghers and the Status Quos and the Thunders, and they never made the effort to come here and tour in the summer. They just sort of went, Anyway, yes.
Well, they probably couldn't get on the bills in the summer because, you need a strong bill to build those large venues up. So, again, they needed to come and do the work in the wintertime in America. You're trying to get the American offices of your record company to support you and maybe put up some tour support, some financial support for you to get over. And of course, those people have got their new American signings that they're far more interested in. And they kind of have that, it's Thunder, it's the UK. I've got this new band, Tesla, I want out there. So, there was definitely a sense of competition that you had to work against.
Yeah. Yep. Like everything, politics ruined our music scene. Politics ruins everything. But let's get apolitical here and get over to Tommy Shaw talking about going to California, Led Zeppelin, and a lot more. Here is the one, the only, Tommy Shaw. We are speaking with Styx's Tommy Shaw. He's got a new single called Going to California, which, of course, is a cover of the Led Zeppelin classic. As we say in Montreal, Tommy, bonjour. How are you?
Bonjour. I'm great, all things considered. This is the first time I've been at my home here in Nashville since we moved here in the springtime, because that's always prime touring time for us. And in fact, the day that I got the call to not go to the airport was I was packing my suitcase to go out on a 3-week run with Styx. And so I was here to see the apple blossoms, to smell them. I'd never seen them before. So it's been kind of nice to reconnect here with where I live, actually to connect for the first time in spring.
Well, in fact, let me ask you about that, because, a lot of bands, as we get older, we start talking about farewell tours and getting off the road and stuff. But then when you're off the road, you go, dang, I missed sort of the backstage catering and the bus calls and the meal tickets and stuff.
And the gig.
Yeah.
The show.
How is it for you? I mean, has it sort of changed your perspective on, we should call a farewell tour in the next 5 years to like, oh yeah, no. I stayed home for COVID. I'm good.
Yeah. Farewell is when they're reading your name, saying, he had a long and wonderful life.
Yeah,
there's your farewell.
We don't need that. So let's talk about this going to California. It was recorded in the past years ago. It was supposed to be part of, I guess, Shaw Blade's third album or whatever. Doesn't come out. It goes in the vault. Talk to me about pulling it out, but also, what does the song mean to you? Why did it speak to you? Why did you say, you know what, I'm going to give this a go and record this song?
Well, I had a similar experience. I was living in New York, and my wife and I got a divorce, and I just I'd always wanted to live in California. I'd rented and, kind of spent some time there, but I hadn't lived there, and that's what I did. I got this notion, and I packed up all my stuff and moved to Los Angeles, and so it's had a ring of truth and experience for me. But it was also just one of those things that my friend Willie Vankovich, who was the third guy in Shaw Blades and is also the Styx co-writer and producer, we had finished with all the cover stuff. The album was done. We toured behind it with Shaw Blades. But he said, I've always wanted to hear you do this song. And it's Robert Plant singing a beautiful version of it. And he said, I think it's in your wheelhouse. So I said, well, let's just lay down the guitar and the mandolin and let me give it a shot. Because I wanted, the covers are funny. You want to inject your own personality and yourself into it, but you don't want to wreck the magic that was created by the original. So it was just Will and me in the studio. So we played around with it a few times, and I got to know it, how to sing it, and finally got that one take, and it was like, well, I don't think I can beat that. And it's really sat in, this has been kind of a few years where it just sat with, what are we going to do with this in that file? But it was I always go back and listen to it and enjoy it. So, but here's why we did it. It was because after the lockdown, there were no more Styx shows, and our fans they had bought tickets, and they're still holding on to their tickets for when we rescheduled these, and we were, thinking, what can we do to give them some kind of content? So we started remixing some of our live concerts, and start out small, and then it was like, well, why don't you do a video? So I did a video in my studio, just me playing Boat on the River, and then sent it to Todd and Lawrence, and they added their parts to it. So we had a little special thing in the middle of that show, and it just started getting to the point where we had a 2-hour show that we were trying to produce. And you got guys like me. I'm not really a Pro Tools engineer. I can do my demos and things like that on it, but these things were getting so long that we were up till like 3:00 in the morning on the morning before the show was going to go. And with my engineer, who's in Denver, we're starting to make mistakes, and we're going, you start going backwards. And so because we were just getting exhausted, and I finally said, we got to have some time off here. And that's kind of how that happened. I said, I've got this song. Why don't we just release that for the fans? And it's something new for them. And so I honestly thought this is just going to be something we put out for our fans on our Facebook, and all our social media, and let them know about it, and they can enjoy that. And then we'll see what happens after that. But everybody in the office said, no, this is good. We should go ahead and just follow through with it and put it out there for everybody to enjoy. So that's what happened. That's why we're talking today.
Yeah, and listen, it absolutely turned out great. But so let me ask you just a couple of things back from the 70s. When you were out on the road, did you at any time cross paths with Led Zeppelin? Was it a band that you were as Styx? Were you watching that band going, that's a good move. We should do that. What was sort of the relationship with the band as you saw them in their prime?
Well, it was actually it was one of John Bonham's last concerts, and we were in Germany, and we had played a few shows, and it was we had a couple of days off, so we went ahead to the next place we were going to be playing, which was Hanover, Germany. And we pulled in that night, and our usual thing is we all show up. Everybody goes up to their room, and we see you the next afternoon when checkout time. So we go into the lobby, and somebody says, "I think I just saw John Bonham in there." And then I look, and there's Jimmy Page walking into the hotel. And so our normal routine of going up and then going to bed. None of that counted. Within 5 minutes, everybody was back down in the lobby, and so I went to the lounge with the woman I was living with in Michigan at the time, and so we walked in, and there's Robert Plant, and he sees us, and he says, "Come join us." So we spent, a nice long time with him, and John Bonham was there, and he introduced us, and could not have been more cordial and friendly. And we had a great night, and then we went to see them the next night, and it was unforgettable.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And I'll ask you one more Zepp question, then I'm going to get back to Styx. But Sweet Madam Blue has been sort of compared to as a distant cousin of Led Zeppelin's Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Was that a nod to the song? Was it completely accidental? Or was it like, hey, I like what they're doing, let's sort of figure out, how did that sort of come about?
Well, from what I understand, it was because this was on Equinox. This was the year that I joined the band, but it had been recorded earlier. And I think the idea was let's do something arpeggiated on the 12th string. And that was what John Sorluski came up with. And then they built the song around that. And we play that song to this day. John was one of those guys. I really admired his influence on the band, especially on that album. I got to meet him just a brief moment when I was up there to do the audition to join Styx in late December '75. And I was staying with the tour manager, and John knocked on the door. I answered the door, and that's how we met. And it's kind of awkward in a way for both of us because he was the guy that's taking your place. But he left. He didn't get. It was his doing that he left, and that was my only living exposure to John Sorluski. But the more I listen to the Equinox album, I hear his influence, and he was really something experimental, and he had a really high voice that he used beautifully, and that's one of my favorite Styx albums.
Oh, a fantastic album, and that song live still resonates. I've seen you, 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years, and it's just fantastic. Recently, I was talking to Todd, and he spoke of this new Styx album that is ready to go, but sort of locked down because of the lockdown. But he spoke specifically of a song called Sound the Alarm. Talk to me a little bit about this sort of finished album and this song Sound the Alarm, which apparently is very emotive and makes him want to cry. And it's just super beautiful. When do we think we get to see this? And can we do it at a distance where you send each other MP3s or files and just get it done while everybody's at home?
Well, everybody has learned it that way. We've kept them, in the loop, and so Todd, everybody knows their parts, but we like to record at Blackbird for tracking. We like their drum sounds and their different choices of drum rooms, and it's 8 minutes from where I live, so we can do some of it, some of the details in my studio, but all of the drums we do over there on two 24-track, 2-inch tape Studer machines. So everything is analog there. And in fact, on the last album, The Mission, there was not one single digital plug-in anywhere. Even for the tape echoes, we had two tape machines rolling around on the control room floor. One of them had a very speed, and Jim Scott would figure out the math for the delay times. So everything that you hear on there has this warm tape saturation sound to it. Even if it was recorded on Pro Tools digitally, we would record at the highest resolution, and everything would go over there and it would run across the tape heads, so it had that tape saturation to it. So that's one of the reasons we like to go over there. And John McBride, who owns the studio, he's a big collector of analog gear. So he has all these great tube amps and processors and limiters, and so it's just if you're an analog geek, which we are, it's just a magical place to record. And he has, the album Asia by Steely Dan.
Of course.
That album, and that's, a lot of people say that's the best analog record ever recorded. Well, John has the console that he bought from them, and so we like using that, and so we just have this kinship, and we're good friends with John McBride. I have a little building right across the street from there that we use for storage, and so it's a nice familiar place for us.
Yeah, and I like that old style of recording. I actually prefer when bands get, 4 on the floor and just roll tape. But you mentioned Will a couple of times. He's, of course, on the Going to California track with you. He did produce The Mission, first album in 12 years. Was that album sort of the relaunch of Styx's recording career? Because you've got this new album that you're working on. Did that sort of give you the juices to say, hey, this is fun to write new music and let's keep doing it? And how important is new music at this stage for the band?
Well, it just depends on how you're doing musically. If it's coming to you and it's working and it's appealing to everybody, and you're writing it for everyone, and because that's what it's meant to do, is just to showcase everybody in the band's talents, and because everybody in the band is a standout musician. That is the kind of thing where we want to do it again, and the Mission, it's been so well received by the fans, and did so well on the charts and sales wise that at one point we said, let's see what happens if we play the entire album live and then take a break and then come back and play all the classic stuff. And that's just become a destination for our fans. We had the Beacon booked, and we had the Warner Theater booked in D.C., and we already played, I think, 3 of those shows, and they embraced this album. And if you've ever listened to it, it's one of those albums. It kind of goes by quickly, and to the point where you get to the end, and it's like, what? And you wind up playing it over again. I even do that. I get to the end, it's like I should have been paying more attention to the beginning of it, because now I know how it ends. So we really enjoy the art of making an album and writing it as an album, and then sequencing it as an album, so that it's a journey from song to song. Every song is like taking you up a step and further into the, what's coming next. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I have to say, by the way, as a fan, sometimes when you hear, "Oh, the band's got a new album," you go, "Oh, okay, great." And then I heard the Mission, and I went, "Oh yeah, that is great. Well done." Now you did a lot of the writing with Will. Most of the tracks are written by you and Will. Do you see yourself at some point going off with him and doing some kind of solo project? I mean, not too long ago you did The Great Divide.
Right.
Do you see yourself saying, "Hey, Will, let's put together, a singer-songwriter project or a bluegrass album part 2, or where do you see your relationship with him going?"
Well, there's that, because we've pretty much written. We're going to have to cull some songs from the next album, because we like to not overstay our welcome as an album. I like for you to get to the end and wish there was more, rather than I can't finish. I don't have time to listen to 18 songs. I like it where it's almost like a cliffhanger, and then you can sit down and listen to it on two sides of a vinyl disc. That's kind of the rule. Can we fit it onto one disc? And so we're already writing into something. I don't know whether it's a solo album or what, but yeah, we've talked about that, and I've had some people saying, "When are you going to do another bluegrass album?" Which I would love to do, especially now that I live in Nashville. I know I'll never be fully accepted by the International Bluegrass Music Association, because I'm not one of them. I haven't paid bluegrass dues, but I do. I'm born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, so I've had that kind of influence in my life since I was a kid, listening to Grand Ole Opry and everything that came up at night on WMS. And so I know, just from face value, it might seem kind of like, you ain't from around here, buddy. But I am from around here. So, I kind of did it for myself and for my mother. It was her favorite album I ever did. And I just
It's
enjoy
a fun
it.
album. Listen, it's a fun album. People with always, labeling stuff in genres. It's a fun album, but I do want to ask, or actually, I want to. You mentioned that the albums have to fit onto a vinyl, and by the way, thank you for saying that, because growing up in the '70s, you had 8 songs, 9 songs. Albums were 30 minutes, 34 minutes, and then the CD came out, and every band I loved decided that it had to be 75 minutes long. And there was an exhaustion. It's like, ugh, I don't want to listen to 17 songs. Please.
I know. Well, you can't comprehend that much information as well as you can a short conversation. It's like when someone talks too long. After a certain while, you start to sound like you can't. I can't. What were we talking about before?
Yeah. And by the way, which is why I want to keep interviews to about 25 minutes, because when I was with a different network, they would say, you have to do an hour. And I'm like, listen, I love Tommy, but an hour's a lot. So 25 minutes is great. But quickly back to The Great Divide. You had a chance to work with Alison Krauss. She did backing vocals on 2 songs. She's, of course, done stuff with Robert Plant. What was it like working with Alison? Because she is just one of these talents, right?
Oh, she's just insane. When we were in Damn Yankees, we were playing outdoors, I think in Indianapolis one evening, and somebody said, Alison Krauss is at the stage entrance. And I was like, yeah, right. Because I've been following her since she was a little kid, and I said, no, she's not a Styx fan. Well, when I lived in Los Angeles, my wife and I lived next door to a casting agent, and her husband was an actor. And one day, Nancy, who lived next door, she sends over this CD of Alison Krauss in Union Station. And she said, I want you to listen to this, because they're playing down at the Wiltern. Maybe we'll go see her. And so I put it on, and it was like, I don't know if have you heard that album? If you haven't, you should.
Which one?
Like Alison Krauss in Union Station.
Yes, of course. That's
okay. So
that's what I do. I'm a rock guy. I have to listen to all of this.
It's just classic. So we said, we're definitely going. So we get down there. We got good seats, like 15th row, kind of center. And so she comes out, and they're just awesome. It's just like Mahavishnu Orchestra of bluegrass. and they're funny, and and then she starts talking about. She says, one of my favorite singers ever growing up is in the audience tonight. And I'm looking around because I recognize all kinds of actors and singers, and it's a very diverse but kind of famous audience. And I'm thinking, God, is it that guy? And well, it was me. She called me out by name up there, and I was like, what? I was just stunned. And so, of course, when it was over with, I was like, well, we got to go backstage. And she told the story about how she used to go with her brother and pull up to the health food store and open up the door and put on a Styx album and walk away from the car and have it blaring out there just to see if she could irritate people. And so that led to me asking her to come sing a song on this album, the solo album that I did, Seven Deadly Zens, on this song called Half a Mind. And so she came to the house, and first of all, she and my wife became instant friends because they're kind of two of a kind, still are. And they their phone calls are like, I don't want to hear all this, girl talk stuff. So anyway, so this was that day when they became friends, and we're listening the other in the control room for her singing Half a Mind, and just tears coming down. It was so beautiful, singing the verses and then singing the chorus with me. And then she sang on the title track of The Great Divide. And it's, anything that Allison does, it's angelic and emotional, something that will just bring up your emotions. It gets to your heart. So that was, I have to pinch myself of some of the good fortune I've had along the way, and that was one of those things.
That was definitely one of the things. Now, you quickly mentioned Damn Yankees, so I'm just going to ask you this because we've talked about it before. You told me that unreleased album was sitting in your vaults in Nashville. You told me this about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Since you're releasing stuff from the vaults like Going to California, how close are we getting to the Damn Yankees being released? Is that, someday maybe, or just no?
No, it was put together wrong. It was the wrong producer. There was no vibe between, at least I know for me and the producer. I came in and went out to sing one of my songs, and he had rewritten the chorus, rewritten my lyrics to the chorus. And I go to sing, and it's like that. Who? And I saw Jack kind of, a little half smile on his face, looking, because he said, "Boy, this is going to be good." And I was like, "What is your name again?" And you rewrote my lyrics, and I'm supposed to, no, first of all, no. And holy, wow, the nerve of you to do that. And that's kind of how it went from there. I was like, you.
That's funny. That's
we're not meant to work together, pal. And the rest of it was just not an organic Damn Yankees album. When Damn Yankees is recording, we don't need help. We've got this, So it's there. And even John Kalodner said, just no, take the tape home. This was a bad idea. Damn Yankees has this magic, and we're still friends. We could step up and play right now, no rehearsal. We'd all play it, and it would be like it would be.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, when a producer is rewriting your lyrics, now I get it. No, I just asked because the other day I was watching one of the Much Music channels here in Canada, and they played Damn Yankees live in Denver. So they played some videos, and I just watched the band. And I was going, first of all, wow, it's 2020 and they're playing Damn Yankees. And then I looked at how the energy was, and I went, my Lord, what a great effing band! Holy mackerel! Be so good to see them again. And I will finish on this just for a little Canadian content. You, of course, have Lawrence Gowan, one of our greatest exports. You did, of course, sort of come to his he became you became aware of him at a show in Montreal on a Def Leppard bill, but also Will Ivankovich is in the Guess Who. A lot of Canadian connections. What does Canada mean to Styx? And I know it's sort of a very stock question, but still, what does Styx mean to Canada mean to Styx?
Well, it's always a breath of fresh air going up there. Just the people and the culture and the talent that's up there. Because Canada is such a vast territory, and their population. If you probably distributed acres per citizen, everybody would have a massive ranch, So the gigs up there are not as plentiful as they are here. So Canadian artists have to work so hard to get saturation to everyone up there. So they're all just these hard-working, super talented. They leave no side of their career unmanaged, and so to work with them, and like Sass Jordan, she's a great example of that. She's had a #1 blues album. It was #1 for almost 2 months last time I checked, and it's unbelievable. So I have such great respect, and all the Canadian bands that we'd worked with, same thing. We're still good friends with them, and when we go up there, a lot of times we'll still have them on the bill.
Yeah, and you'll still have Lawrence pull out "Criminal Mind" or one of those songs, which is always sort of a nice little addition to a Styx show in Canada, is to see a Gowan song being done live. And hey,
well, I don't know if you heard the story when we asked him to come to Los Angeles to see if he would be a fit with Styx. His voice was different, but it's this voice. It's in the same register, and he's more of a rock singer than Dennis was. So we weren't trying to fool anybody into thinking that Dennis was still the singer, because you're going to find out. So we just adapted, but when he came to play, it was at my house in Hollywood Hills, and we went into my studios, just him, James Young, our manager Charlie Brusco, and me, and we were the 3 people in his audience. And I said, don't play "Come Sail Away. Play "Criminal Mind." Do it like you did it at the show the other night. So he did. He did it exactly as if he was playing it,
the Bell Center or the Mole Center.
Yeah. So yes. He just laid it bare like that, and all of us at the end of it were like, "Oh my God, wow!" And that's the way he rolls. He no half measures for Lawrence Gowan, and he's like the big brother in the band, even though he's age-wise he's somewhere in the middle. But he is a big brother in his family, lineage. And so he behaves like one, and he's this great calming voice in the band. Plus, he's got a great sense of humor. And when you're on the road, the hang is about 85% of it. It's the downtime, and so the downtime out there is just as fun as the on time. So all those things matter, and that's why we've been able to play as many shows per year for as many years as we have, and still look forward to every single night of it. He throws down up there. Everybody does. So it's the kind of band where you don't want to be the guy who's bringing up the rear, and it's just such a joy.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And on that, Tommy, always a pleasure going to California, of course, folks. Available now. And as we say here in Montreal, merci. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye now.
Okay. Bye.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @Mitch Lafon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_Lafon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.